Good evening and welcome everyone to 12 News at 6 on a day that many Americans will remember and talk and write about for years to come. Former President Trump found guilty on all counts in his New York hush money trial.
He is the first former president in history to be convicted of a crime. Shortly after the verdict was read, Trump gathered with his team just outside the courtroom. The jury found Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in connection with a hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels near the end of the 2016 presidential campaign. When he spoke to the press on his way out of the courthouse, Trump maintained his innocence and made it clear that he believes the verdict will not stop his run for the White House.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one, with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
A lot to unpack there. Let's bring in 12 News journalist Bram Resnick. Bram, Arizona, of course, a key swing state in November. Voters here could decide who wins the White House. And maybe you can answer this, and maybe it's too early, but what do you think the political implications of today's sweeping guilty verdict can be?
Well, Mark, we're 6 months out from the election, polls indicating Donald Trump is ahead of Joe Biden in our state. But boy, this could just totally shake up the calculation. We'll have to see. There's going to be a lot of polling in the coming days. Now, we're seeing muted reactions or even silence from elected Democrats, outrage from Republicans. And as for voters, we're going to have to let this unprecedented case and verdict settle in. Let's start with the political reaction. Gina Swoboda, the chair of the Arizona Republican Party, said this conviction is a blatant assault on the principles of justice. President Trump's trial was marred by bias and a predetermined agenda, stripping him of the fair trial to which every American is entitled. Carrie Lake, the frontrunner in the Republican primary for the U.S. Senate and a staunch Trump defender, had this to say: "We just witnessed the most egregious example of election interference and an outright mockery of the rule of law in the 246-year history of our republic. This entire process, right down to the verdict itself, has been nothing but a shameful political stunt." I have to correct Carrie Lake here. The United States of America is 248 years old, not 246. And Congressman Ruben Gallego, the likely Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate, tweeted, "I respect our justice system and the rule of law. The process played out, and we should always demand accountability from our elected leaders." Governor Katie Hobbs so far has been silent. Let's turn now to the legal fallout from the first criminal conviction of a former president and how Donald Trump's political response could hurt him legally. Joining us is Mark Kekanovich, a former federal prosecutor, now white-collar attorney who also handles election law cases. Welcome back.
Thank you, Bram.
Let's look ahead to the sentencing scheduled for July 11th, just 4 days before the Republican National Convention. Who sets that date?
Well, it was agreed on by the parties today after the verdict was read. They agreed to that date. We'll see if it gets moved, but I think it's a date that will stand.
And so what's the range of potential punishment for the former president?
Well, from probation to prison time, and it's ultimately the judge's decision. And as you mentioned, and as the quote that we heard earlier said, Donald Trump is saying he's innocent, that the system is rigged, it's everybody's fault but his own. He hasn't turned on his attorneys yet, but wait a couple minutes, that will probably happen. It's a bold strategy to be criticizing the judge who's going to be sentencing you. We'll see how that plays out for him.
And so talk a little bit more about that. We heard him in that long soundbite there, ripping the verdict, ripping the court, ripping everything. If he's going to get the minimum sentence, does he have to show some remorse?
Well, that's one of the things that judges take into consideration at sentencing. They take into consideration both the charges and the defendant who's before them and whether or not they're a risk to reoffend. And when you have someone who's lampooning the justice system in the United States, lampooning the jurors who were, a jury of his peers, 12 people, there were probably, statistically, supporters of his on that jury. And the jury has to be unanimous. And they were unanimous 34 times, resounding defeat for Donald Trump in New York today.
And the judge who's going to sentence Donald Trump also issued a gag order.
Yes.
That has to play into his decision.
Yes, that he repeatedly violated to criticize not only the judge, but the judge's daughter. That's not a strategy I would advise any of my clients to take, Brandon.
So what works well in the political arena does not play well in the courtroom and even at sentencing.
And query whether it does. It is a real shame to see our elected leaders criticizing our rule of law and our system of laws. That's one of the things that may set this country apart than other countries. No one is above the law. We don't have a king in this country. We fought a revolution for that, and we have our Constitution to protect those.
Got to end it there. Mark Kokonovich, thanks very much for joining us. Mark, Caribe?
All right, Bram, thanks. The verdict coming 158 days before the November election, where the former president is the presumptive Republican nominee.
So we had 12 News journalist Colleen Secor look into what implications these convictions may or may not have on the November ballot right here in Arizona. Colleen?
Yeah, hey, Mark and Caribe. We brought those questions to several leaders around the state surrounding the election, including trying to understand if Trump can run for president in Arizona with these felony convictions. We asked the Secretary of State's office and the Maricopa County Recorder's office about any implications there could be. They referred to the Arizona Attorney General's office and the court system. When we asked the AG's office about an Arizona law that prohibits people from running for office when they have a felony conviction, a spokesperson declined to comment. So we took the question to former U.S. Attorney Paul Charlton.
In the state system, there may be prohibitions for state officials running for office, but in the federal system, we look to the U.S. Constitution for guidance. And the U.S. Constitution does not prohibit an individual with a felony conviction from running for president of the United States. So you can, in theory, and perhaps in reality come the November election, be a convicted felon and still be president of the United States.
Charlton says the Constitution is sparse when it comes to the requirements to run for president. You can see them here, which is being 35 years old, a natural-born citizen, and lived here in the U.S. for 14 years. So from what we know right now, it'd be expected that Trump's name would be on that ballot. Mark and Caribe.
All right, Colleen, thanks. 12 News will have continuing coverage of this historic verdict throughout the night, and of course later on tonight on 12 News at 10. Remember, we're always on for you at 12news.com, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and all of our social media channels.